are we going to talk about?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Well, first of all, so my girl Shannon over here, we're on the Ohio Valley Art League board together, so we're always talking about that. And you and I have a few things in common. One, we're both Emmy losers. It's okay, we're going to win one day. We're going to win. We are going to win.
To my mom, I'm like, it's kind of not losing, but
it's not. Yeah, it's not. It's an honor to be nominated. And then we both love the library. We're obsessed.
Yes.
So when I found out that Shannon and I were both going to be on the board of Ohio Valley Art League, I was super pumped. And I live at the library. I have 2 library cards. I live next to a library. I don't have the internet at home. All I do is rent DVDs from the library. It's true. Ask them all. Anyway, wow. So she came over to my desk last week because you were on Lifestyles for something, and you're like, girl, I gotta tell you about something. I was like, what? She's like, we have this award-winning costume designer from Henderson coming here. I go, what? Who is she? And I'm like, Googling. I'm like, oh my gosh, The Handmaid's Tale, Westworld. I see all this stuff she's done. Oh my gosh, so I'm super pumped. I'm like your ultimate fan, and I just met her like a week ago. But I think that just really speaks to people like Shannon and the library and Anne. This is why I've lived here twice, and why you made such a great love letter to Henderson. Is the Tri-State is such a beautiful place because it's made up of such wonderful, beautiful, humble, talented people. Like, she's so humble. This woman did a cultural moment with her costumes, you guys. Like, you're such a big deal. Like, oh my gosh. You're such a big deal. It's so cool. If I could afford you, you'd be my stylist. But anyway, I love her. She's so great. So before we start, we just have so much to be proud of what you've accomplished and what you've learned, and why a library is such a great institution that we have to continue to support, because the education's given you and me and so many other people, everybody in here, and the work that Shannon and her team do. It's just so fundamental to society and how we progress and how we continue to learn and just have that free community. And you love Shakespeare and I love Shakespeare, so I could talk to you about Shakespeare all night.
Can I just really quick, because you've been so patient.
Sorry.
Turn around and look behind you. If that is an inspiration as a part of this learning facility, what great, that's the movie screen of life. I just have to say that. I'm so inspired every time I walk in here.
So speaking of inspiration, obviously you showed us a lot of where maybe you get your inspiration from and where you draw that. So, kind of walk us through your journey into styling and fashion and costume design, and what really prompted you to go into that field.
I don't feel like it. I don't know.
Okay. Just kidding.
So listen, I was, what's the short answer? I always say when you're from Henderson, when you're from Kentucky, we speak in the round, so it just takes us a long time to get there. But I'm going to do my best. The short answer is I always love art. I did study fashion, so I not only didn't win an Emmy, I didn't finish school. How am I teaching all these classes? I don't know. I'm lucky. But I decided while working in fashion, my mother made so many of my clothes growing up because I was the rude kid who was like, I'm not wearing my brother's clothes, even though I loved them more. And I would just show her a picture and she would make it, like overnight for school. And so I got used to that. And I love individuality. I moved to New York at a great time. I was actually in England at even a better time when punk was starting and street fashion, and I was like, I'm living here forever. Not, that didn't happen. But life shifts and changes, and you're supposed to be where you are. And so I went to New York, studied at FIT, but got a job with a fashion designer before the first day of school. And classes were, I don't know how long, but my whole life. And then she was like, well, girl, you're going to work 70 hours, but you're going to love it. So I chose her over finishing school, and started working as a fashion stylist for one of my best friends to this day, Yoli Tang, who is a Malaysian designer who saw me. This is all, anybody out there who wants to be a fashion designer or a costume designer or a farmer, it's all hard work and pure kismet. And the kismet is, I was working in display at Bonwit Teller. And I did a display for this designer, and she was like, Lord have mercy, who are you? And I'm like, a kid who likes what you do. And so she hired me on the sly to be her stylist for 7th Avenue for Fashion Week. From there, On my lunch hour, I was sneaking over to Elle Magazine, American Elle Magazine, and they hired me as a freelance stylist. And then that went into music videos, and then that went into film, and that's a really long story about the how-to, but that's the short version.
It's long. But I think the theme is you were hustling, you were taking those opportunities, you weren't like, no, I mean, you really went after it. And
yes, I was hustling, but also I think the beautiful thing about being from here, you know, we always have to look at the glass half full, not half empty. And for me, somebody told me today there was fashion classes somewhere. You did. There were no fashion classes. There was art classes, you know, and so you become more creative when you don't have it easy. That's what I want to say. And you take what you're given, and your mind is actually more expansive because you're creating not only what you want to have happen, you're creating it your way. And I always tell people in Hollywood, producers and directors especially, you're never going to find me. You're never going to find a half Okinawan, half Kentuckian who loves that and can translate it in a creative way, you know. So yes, that is a bit of a hustle, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So what was your favorite, your first major like project as a costume designer, and then how did that kind of influence more of your career?
Right. So I love all of them, big and little, and that is the truth, because it's all the same hard work, you know, big and little. But I guess Sopranos, again, kismet, right? I was working in indie film for real, using all my own clothes in my closet, all my friends' clothes in their closets because there was no money. I was driving the fucking truck, pardon me. I was driving the truck, you know, to location and like driving over New York trash cans. But this person, I had just gone to Italy for one of those indie films. And it's called Dust. It's beautiful. And the director is Macedonian. His name's Miljo Manchevsky. And they weren't supposed to have an American. Again, kismet. They had English, Macedonian, and German money, which means all of the people who are the department heads, the costume designer, the DP, are from those places, right? When it's their money. And I had done a music video for him. And he was like, oh my God, this is about the Dust Bowl. It's about the Midwest. It's Oklahoma. We need an American. So they snuck me in. They snuck me in, as luck would have it, and very good creativity. That film went to the Venice Film Festival. Okay? I promise this is a short version. And it won the Golden Lion because it was a brilliant film for no money. It went from the years 1900 to the year 2000. And because of that, I had just come from Italy. I'd never had the money to go to Italy. And somebody said, okay, you're meeting this guy named David Chase, and he's Italian from the mafia, you know, his family, and we're just going to meet in a cafe, and you're going to talk. And I was like, if you were a costume designer and you live in New York City from the years 85 to any time today, but for me in the 90s, you've done a few mafia films, right? Because, come on. Forget about it. You know, it's like that's what you do. And I had beautiful personal experiences with real folks. And so I had a lot to talk about with David Chase. I had just been to Italy, so I was like, I love Italy, because I did. Venice is beautiful for Americans. And he was like, let's give you a shot. There's this new cable show. We don't have any money. It's called HBO. We don't even know if it's going to go anywhere. And that was The Sopranos. Yeah. It didn't change my life. It changed my life for maybe the next job.
Right.
And then you're like, oh man, there's no money again. And then you get lucky. You know? Yeah.
So what are some key influences maybe in your career, some mentors that have impacted you? You kind of mentioned maybe a few people, but that kind of helped you and influenced you along the way?
Totally. I'm trying to think. I mean, I never was smart enough or savvy enough to say I need a mentor, right? Because you're just kind of on a trajectory and you're running a marathon and just trying to pay your rent. Let's be real. Like that's life, right? But there were people, Yoli, this designer who's my friend now, I worked for her, and again, out of kismet, Yoli has debilitating migraines. I was 21. 21. Who knows anything at 21? And she was like, I hate to say this, it was maybe a week before Fashion Week, before her show, and it's like a nightmare. Like there's clothes everywhere, and you don't have a life, and maybe you get a cup of coffee if you're lucky, and you're all skinny, but whatever, you're hungry. And she goes, I hate to say this, but I can't move. I can't breathe, I can't work. All I can do is get the collection done. So you're gonna have to do everything. Can you do it? I was 21. I guess what I want to say is say yes to anything. Always say yes, because every time I've ever read that from anybody I ever looked up to, it always works out, right? You always can figure it out. So I said yes. I hired the models. I hired the guy to do the music. I hired the makeup artist, and prayed. And it did great. So she's a mentor in a way because she trusted me, and after all that, after many years after, we were on a street corner waiting for a stoplight to change, and I was probably blathering about how I was going nowhere, and she goes, I don't want to cry, so don't look at me. I always cry. It's okay, it's good to cry. But she looked at me and said, I don't know how to tell you this, and I don't say this to anybody, but you're a genius. And I was like, come on, you're full of BS. Like, I don't want to hear that. I just need, like, real truth. I always felt like a softie, a soft Kentuckian in hard New York. And she goes, Ann, look at me. You're a genius. Swallow that. Don't forget it. I'm never going to tell you again. She saved my life. I kept going because of her. So, yeah.
Those tidbits on a New York street corner.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we kind of saw through the pictures that you made into a video of where maybe you draw some of your creativity and thoughts for costumings and new projects. But when you start, whether it was Handmaid's Tale or Westworld,
right,
or movies, and they hire you and they give you the concept, like, so where do you start, and like how do you kind of begin that process?
Right. That's such a beautiful question. Was that on there before? I didn't even see
it. It was. I just worded it a little differently, maybe. These are all from Shannon. I have a few of my own. These are all from Shannon. I have two of my own, but they're not. I haven't asked them yet. So
because a great interview will change everything. So then here's the truth. I don't know about anybody else. I've never worked for anybody else, which is weird. But therein lies the whole Henderson, Kentucky quotient. I didn't know better. That's the truth. I probably would have had an easier life. I probably would have like 10 Oscars on each side to brag about, so I don't have any of that. Because I made my own path. And what happens to me, and I'm sure that anybody in any creative field will say the same thing, you always feel like you don't have it for the next thing. And honestly, I think that is a beautiful gift from God, the ancestors, your family, whoever. And what happens to me, and on The Handmaid's Tale, it happens on every job. I forget even the terminology. I've done this for 35 years. But it's a way, it's a glitch. I might as well be a robot. It's a glitch. Because I purposefully forget everything. I forget actors' names. I forget the design of the why, and I start clean. And that is by design. I'm not trying to do that. It's just my brain has to be. It's like starting a painting. You don't want to keep painting the same painting. To be honest with all of you, I always say it. If any MF says to me on a job, I really want you to do a cape, I'm like, I've already done that. I've already done that. No one wants to keep making the same painting. What I do, I struggle every single time. And for all of you who think costume design is really fancy and easy and like glamorous, no. It can be for like 5 minutes in an interview where you're like, oh, I did do something cool. But really, I'm always in overalls, I'm always sweaty, I never have my hair down. In fact, I'm always bald because I'm lazy. And my creative brain, like I just want to give it all to creativity. And so on Handmaid's Tale, seasons 1 and 2, I couldn't get there. And people were waiting. Tailors were waiting to make the clothes because there's a giant deadline, and everybody wants to know, like, all the money people are like, where is it? Where's the idea so we can say yes or no? And I was like, ugh. So I always work Saturdays for free. Imagine how much money I could have made charging, but I don't charge for Saturdays because Saturdays is just for me. You know, my teams can be 5 people on an indie film, and they could be 100 people on a really big day of something like Westworld or The Handmaid's Tale. And so I never let people come in. If they have to, I don't let them talk to me. I don't have any sound. It has to be a clean palette, a clean canvas. And the way in is through something 100% not my forte. I studied cello, I studied violin badly. I played my grandmother's piano by ear. I never learned music, but the thing, so if you think about what you love but you don't know, that is a really good way in creatively, because what it does is it turns the channel on your brain to be more open. Because your eyes, if you're a costume designer or a painter like myself, sometimes a writer, you're like, I know how to do that. I just go steps 1 through 10. But it's a lie, because then you're just going to make the same painting. So on Handmaid's Tale, I sat staring at different ideas for the wings, the head pieces. And it's a crazy looking thing. Like, who wants to put that on their head? And in fact, they told me not to. They said, nobody's ever going to buy this. It's going to cover the actors' faces. It's dumb. It's old. Well, look at what it did. Yeah. People are using them in Congress, you know. And so what I did was study it. I studied a barn, an Amish barn, to be honest with you, because the lines were so beautiful. To me, how I start is I think about what is the home on, like a turtle. I love turtles. We saw a ton of them. I think about what is the barn surrounding that person. That's just me. That's just really random. But I think about in the future, we're all going to be wearing our homes like a turtle. I don't know why. I just think in the future it's going to be like so, less than what we don't have all this stuff in the future. We just have the essentials, which is the dress we wear every day. And so that became the idea for The Handmaid's Tale. Like, everything has to be made in our little costume house of Gilead. Literally, we had to make everything. And on that Saturday, in about 3.5 hours with the right music, which came from Lizzie Moss, which was called, it's by Blondie, and it said the Crabtree remix. She gave it to me in the fitting, and I thought she made a song for me called the Crabtree remix, but it was a dude in England, a DJ, who made this song, and it's a mashup of Blondie and something else. I listened to that on repeat for 3 hours, like a mad woman. That's how that works for me. It's almost like a meditation or something. And on the second season, same thing. I came and I was like, I can't get started, I'm done, I'm cooked, I don't have it anymore. And so I have a weird glitch, and I think it's because I'm half Okinawan and half American, and so we hear language differently. My first language was Japanese as a baby. And so people kept saying the colonies. If any of you saw season 2, it's this whole other world of unwomen, right, who are basically on their deathbed. And nobody had any ideas. They were like, you come up with something. And so, pressure, right? Like, how could we match the grandeur of season 1? And I kept calling it the wrong thing. I kept calling it This Bitter Earth, because it was a world of toxic wasteland. And I couldn't remember that it was called the colonies. This is like my weird brain. So I kept calling it This Bitter Earth. Another Saturday, I'm there, nothing's coming, and I literally Googled This Bitter Earth. Try it, for yourselves. And this song came up, and it's Dinah Washington, for all you beautiful elders my age and older, and it was, again, happened to be a mashup that I listened to, and that was on repeat, and I designed the whole collection. And when that song is that powerful, I play it during the fittings for the actors to bring them into a world. That was a really long answer, but I couldn't make it any shorter. Yeah, sorry.
I would ask you how you chose the colors, but that's okay. We can talk about it because there's red, brown, and Tina Cerillion for those that haven't seen it. It's really cool. So you also work on period pieces as well, Masters of Sex and others. So how do you balance being creative and having your own like interpretation of these costumes, but also remain true to the decade, to the period? Because I think Masters of Sex goes 50s and 60s, I believe, so it crosses
for my part it was. So I'm very much a tomboy. I'm very much a punk. That's how I, was brought up. And I don't like to do anything the same as anybody else. So that's kind of a problem. And everything takes longer. It's extra. But on and I don't like any kind of ism or cliche. So for a lot of costume designers, everyone thinks, oh, you're precious. Oh, I'm never in a dress. By the way, I put this on and I was like, my cleavage is too big. I'm just not that girl. I'm not that girl. And so I'm a worker, and I like the idea of not being a thing, a cliche, right? I want to do the work. I don't want to be the idea of something. And so everybody's idea of a costume designer is you must do beautiful, period. And also, I'm not going to lie, I kept losing to like every period show. Why? Because that's what people vote for. Okay? Don't ever watch, no, I'm just kidding, Crown or, I don't know, Game of Thrones, I guess that's for whatever. Every show I've ever worked on by design, I guess, I always love the script, that's why I do it, but it never fits into a box. And so, for Masters of Sex, I forgot what they had seen that I had done, but they said, of course we want it to be period, of course we want it to be real. These are real people who were groundbreaking, right, for helping women to have babies back in the day, many women. And so I love documentaries. The real joke, cosmic joke for me is that my favorite thing are documentaries. A world where they don't need me. It's kind of weird, but that's what drives me. And so I always want everything to be very realistic. I always want someone to look like you guys. If I'm going to do a show in Kentucky, set somewhere on the Ohio River, I'm going to sit for days just, driving around in my car, taking pictures of real people. And before we had cell phones, I used to sketch everything really, really fast, and thank God the producer was like, we love you because your work is so real. And, the thing no producer wants to hear is, I want to make everything. Because they think it costs more. It doesn't. And they think it's, they're babying me in some way. They're spoiling me. But honestly, on Masters of Sex, I had tall Caitlin Fitzgerald on 6 foot tall, and Allison Janney 6 foot tall, for real 6 foot tall. Lizzie Kaplan, really teeny. All the clothes in the costume houses, which is where everybody goes, because it's easier, and you can just rent it, and then they give the rack to the costume designer, and she gets to be like, that one, and that one. I don't do that. I hate that way of working. And so I made everything because the story was about the medical field. And all of the clothes in all the famous costume houses were like poppy, bright, like everybody was a daisy, and it just didn't fit the story. I had to be true to the story. And so they let me. And
they're cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm watching the show right now. They're cool.
But the greatest compliment from the DP, and that's why they listened and let me keep doing that, was he goes, we don't have time is everything in the land of TV, right? And even for Allison Janney, I made a dress in 2 hours because I didn't like what she was going to wear for the day. And everybody was like, oh, Lord. Everybody's getting fired. But we made it, and the New York Times was there, and they did a story on it because they couldn't believe it. But the DP said to the producers and the directors, he goes, I don't have to light the clothes when Anne's costumes come to set. They're already lit because the color and the tone. And I was like, because they'll listen to a dude. which is a shame. I'm trying to change that. But that's,
Well, that's a good follow-up. I'm going to go off here because this is what I do. I'm a journalist. I get questions from listening.
Okay.
So there's a lot of women here. I mean, men and women too, but especially for women. How do you then assert your voice like that in a professional way?
Right.
Because again, it's they think it's more expensive to make the clothes, but you're the expert here and you know what needs to be to make the product excellent.
Right.
So how do you voice that in a professional way to explain, you know, and like you said, as a woman, it can be difficult to be listened to.
Listen, as a woman, as a small woman, as an Asian small woman, they ain't trying to hear me, okay? But the Kentucky comes in real good. When people are, you see that, when people do this, and they sit back in their chair, and they're already like, it's a no, hard no. I'm like, oh, we could do it that way. This is what I always say, and they always turn their asses around. I'm like, we can do it exactly what you want to do. We can do it exactly for half the price and in half the amount of time. And you're going to have a show that looks like everybody else's because we're just going to go to the place, rent the clothes. It's been on 20 other shows. We're going to change the zipper. Or you can listen to me. It's going to come in under budget, and you're going to win an award. What do you think they say? Yeah.
You get what you pay for, too.
Always. And the actors are happy. The directors are happy. Everybody wants a Da Vinci. Nobody wants the screen printed, flat print of a Da Vinci. They want a real one. And so you have to guide them there. You have to make it their idea, really. In life, in anything.
Yeah. What's some of your favorite costumes?
Honestly, I know you saw like a huge mishmash, but the very first things you saw, all white, were, it's a really cool show that I haven't seen.
What was that?
That's the story of my life. But Darren Aronofsky approached me while I was on The Changeling, and if anybody works here in Hollywood, I'll probably get sued for saying this, but I have 5 minutes? Whoa, okay. The end, goodbye. Have a great time. Just kidding. No, I was on a show called The Changeling. You never do another show while you're on a show. But when Darren Aronofsky, one of your heroes, calls, what do you do? And he said, we're doing something new. It's the newest technology on the planet. I can't tell you what that means. Are you interested? And I was like, yes, you're like my dude, of course. And so everything, I can't even think of the terminology, but everything was white, but extreme sports. Look at me. Never done any sports in my life. So it was free climbing. Anybody in sports here? Free climbing, free diving with a whale. They had to wait for the whale and the baby and the mom to show up for weeks somewhere in Africa. Climbing the highest peak in the world. All that stuff was white. You don't do that with white clothes. Extreme sports. And especially someone, I can barely swim. So I was terrified. If I'm terrified, I say yes. Why? Because I never want to repeat the same experience. And I know it's going to be huge. So I have friends all over the world sending me pictures on their cell phone. But that was the first thing, yeah.
How does what we wear elevate who we are? That's for me. Sorry.
How does what we wear elevate who we are? Well, listen, you're talking to somebody who wears the same thing every day. And does it elevate me? No, but what I like is the little quiet surprise, right? If you meet me and you're like, that girl's always dirty, and she always has mud on her, and she's sweaty because I'm farming all the time. My neighbors met me this way. And I was like, hello, I'm Ann, and I'm never home, but I'm your neighbor. And they're like fancy pants who made the town where I live, basically. And I came over, I took a shower. And I was like, I'm never home because I'm a costume designer. And they're like, you are? Like, you're always carrying bags. And I'm like, I know. But I think what elevates you is maybe not your clothes, although some might beg to differ. I think what elevates you is your spirit inside the clothes. As my ex, who's a dear friend, would say, walking out the door is something crazy, always, because I always want to look different for those special Hollywood nights, and he's like, really? He always says, you better make sure you believe it. when you walk out the door, and then everybody else will. And I always listen to that. I always listen to that, except for tonight. Don't judge.
So are we taking questions now from people? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, a little bit longer.
Oh, we do? Okay, hold on. Okay. Salt yield sheet here.
Is this interesting?
Yes.
Okay. We don't want to let you down.
Talk about a project, whether it's a costume or a project, it didn't go as expected. So how do you handle that experience and learn from that, and maybe give advice to us when we go through something at work or personal in the community didn't go as expected?
It happens every day, all day. So for instance, I don't know, the changeling, again, it's a big cape. And these capes are really important because they are meant to be carapaces or houses around the characters. And you're supposed to carry them through so much craziness. Monsters, falling overboard in New York Harbor, witches giving birth, and it was going to be one thing. And there's a fabric shortage. Like, people are not using wools and cottons and things that we need unless it's overseas. And so that's a whole other story. And so I'm the ghetto girl. Okay, I'm from Henderson. I know how to make things work, right? We don't have a lot of fabric stores here, so that's inherent in my DNA. They laughed at me in Canada, which is where The Handmaid's Tale and The Changeling were shot. And I'm always like, okay, you can bring me all the little fancy books of all the fancy fabrics. That's going to take weeks to order and all of our budget. When I know they're going to go through water, we've got to paint them. I always paint the clothes to make them really beautiful and old. And I go to I did this on Westworld because we were in the middle of the desert. We are always in the middle of nowhere. And the director's like, I really want a Scaparelli gown. And you got 2 hours. This happened. And so, or we're going to make this dude, if anybody's seen Westworld, we're going to turn him into the Man in Black. We're in the middle of Utah, folks, and the nearest store there's only one, and it's like a Joann's, right? Or Michael's, maybe Joann's. 3 hours away, 3 hours back. And then we have to sew all night and have the costume and have many. No lie. And so I have gotten used to going into fabrics for home. Upholstery, thank you. And turning them into works of art. Now we're changing them a lot. We're dyeing, painting, fraying them, so you never know that it's a sofa fabric. But like the Man in Black's jacket was parts of that. And so you just, like I said, you just get savvy at solving the problem and calling on God or whoever you call on and being like, please help me make this happen, and making sure you do. I never want people to think I can't make it happen. So that's why I call us magicians. Yeah.
Is that Ed Harris who played that part?
I love Ed Harris. Yes.
That's what I thought.
He might as well be from Kentucky because he's
from
Kentucky. He's not. He's from someplace Oklahoma. Yeah.
He's got that vibe.
Yeah.
We have time for another one. Now it's time.
One more.
Okay, one more.
Ooh, right? Like pressure. Favorite pie flavor? I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, there you go. So we'll go with the last one. What legacy do you hope to leave in the world of costume design?
Never thought about that. Wrong answer, right? We got.
You're not done, obviously. But
what legacy? I would like to change the landscape of costume design. I'd like us. I am a huge. They call me Norma Ray. They have for like 20 years out of my 35, maybe even longer. I want us to have the same rights, the same money, but really the same respect as the DP, the production designer, the makeup people. They all make more than us, okay? It's just out of pride that I've stayed in this business because I don't want to say I made the wrong choice. It's too late now, except that I'm farming, so maybe there's that. But it's like I would like to, and I've been really outspoken. If any of you guys have 6 hours of free time, Sorry, I'm like, why is everything so long that I do? But there is a great website, the TV Academy. It's free. You don't have to sign up for anything. And it's a wonderful video library. It was a 9-hour interview, by the way. But I said yes, because that's the kind of educational stuff that I want out there for young, up-and-coming costume designers. And not just costume designers, artists, DPs to respect us more. But I wanted to be up there with my peers who were like Norman Lear, the great writer Norman Lear, Carol Burnett, you know. So you can go online, TV Academy and Crabtree, and get a lot of food and drinks because it's 6 hours long. But in that video, I say what I want to do to change the world. I think all of us want to change the world in some way. I mean, that's the answer. Is it a legacy thing? I don't know. But listen, my mom broke a lot of boundaries just by being who she is, how she looks, coming here, all her friends right there. The posse, the Asian posse, broke a lot of ground. They broke a lot of ground. So that's in my DNA, you know, and I want to do that, and my little brother. And I want to do that for women. Yeah, all women. But I also want to say, we're not smaller because we're immigrants. We're not smaller because we're women. We just happen to be doing costume design, and you better pay us because you're paying everybody else, right?
And you can't have something if people aren't wearing anything. I mean, I guess
Thank
could,
you. Make it without us. That's
there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. You guys put in a lot of work that people don't even realize. And the problem is
you
you're
know,
shopping. Yes.
You're an actor. Actors are our biggest friend and foe.
Advocate.
Yeah, advocate, because you're wearing that kind of, what I say, exoskeleton. You know,
Right.
the first thing that's your character on the outside.
Well, and
Everything else
your
is
character isn't complete until you have the costume on. You move differently, you
Yeah.
talk differently,
Yeah.
whatever. And people win awards because the costume helps shape their character and how they tell the story. It's a storytelling
And
piece.
because we listen to you guys in the fitting, it's very collaborative. It has to be. It has to be.
Kids are essential.